In today's video, we've got to talk about all these new shipments of Valve hardware and all of the evidence that suggests the Steam Machine and Steam Frame are still coming in June. And after that, we're going to talk about what we've been playing lately. And yes, I'm saying we for a reason. My friend Ray from Xbox Ready has joined me here on Deck Ready for the first time, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Wait. What? No, I was in that other video that you shot in my apartment.
Oh yeah, it does. So
yeah.
this is the second time. That doesn't count. That was like 1.5 times.
Yeah. I popped on for like a half second. Me and Jim are riding high after that weekend, actually attending Summer Games Fest, Days of Play, Xbox Game Showcase, hanging out with a bunch of cool people and drinking these Viking-sized beers at Barney's Beanery over in Burbank. It was an awesome weekend.
Yeah, I hadn't drank for 6 months, so they hit me pretty hard. But getting serious here, the vast majority of people who watch this channel are not subscribed. So if you're one of those people, help me out by subscribing and setting your notifications to all. But with the intro out of the way, let's put our detective hats on and talk about all of these shipments of Steam hardware coming into the United States and try to figure out if this thing is releasing in June or not. Spoilers, I'm pretty sure it is because there are leaks out there. I'm not going to cover leaks. It seems a little egregious, but there are leaks out there. That's all I'm going to say.
You got to be careful about those leaks, man. I got in trouble just the other day because I was talking about the Avatar: The Last Airbender movie, The Legend of Aang, leaking. And at the time, I was like, well, it's already out. I should talk about it. But then I was catching up with someone. And they were like, can't believe you did that, man. Even in the comments, people were like, if you really respected the movie and the people who worked on the movie, you wouldn't be covering these leaks. So very controversial. Yeah, I understand.
So over the past few months, there have been shipments coming in from China to Valve's warehouses, right? And last year, all the shipments were the same size. And last year, they were all Steam Decks, right? Because Valve was getting steady shipments of decks. Then all of those shipments ended when Valve took the decks out of stock. And then they started getting the shipments again. And it turned out those initial shipments of game consoles were decks. So they brought them back in stock. The price increase happened. Everyone lost their minds. We've moved past that. And now there's even more shipments starting up, but this time they're being classified as VR headsets. So what that tells us is that the last shipments were either a mix of Steam Decks and Steam Machines or just Steam Decks. We know they weren't just Steam Machines because obviously the deck came back in stock for a much higher price. So it seems like Valve is getting shipments in of this hardware, which obviously leads us to believe that when you combine it with that update we had when I was at your apartment where Valve said it will ship this summer, they're getting ready for launch because when they started getting shipments of Steam controllers, the launch was turned around very quickly, like within a few weeks. And the same thing happened with the last shipment in terms of the Steam Deck. We have more evidence we'll get to in a couple seconds, but how do you feel about this news? Is this straight conspiracy or is this something worth reading into?
I mean, there's always like an element of mystery when you decide to sit down and like try to analyze like shipping and things like that. I remember, I think it was like 6 months ago where like Xbox got a shipment of like a bunch of hardware. But like when you look at the breakdown of that, it was again, like what you were saying with Valve, like it was a bunch of headsets, it was a bunch of controllers, and like maybe a small percentage of that was a Series X and S consoles, but we weren't quite sure. But I would say that, but on the other hand, I would say that where there's smoke, there's fire. Like it's more than just this specific story combined with the update that we were covering just in this apartment, like in this room, about the Steam Machine launching in summer of 2026.
So all the info we have so far is that initially it was supposed to launch in early 2026. Then, of course, they did their delay where they were like, we still want to launch in the first half of 2026. Then after that, they did another small update where they went back and changed the blog post multiple times because they said, we still hope to ship the Steam Machine and Steam Frame this year. People obviously lost their minds, took that as another delay. They updated it to say in the first half of 2026. And then the latest update we have is this summer. So I obviously really want it to launch in June because if we miss June, we start to get into July. Summer goes until September 22nd, and that's a much longer break. On the other hand, I don't really understand. Well, I understand why people are frustrated about that because, you know, they're excited to buy this stuff. But you look at the Series X, you look at the Switch 2, you look at the PS5, the turnaround time from announcement to release is usually a year. So like September would still give them a few months shy of a year between announcement and ship date. I know people really want this stuff, but it's going to be just as good in a couple months as it would be in June, as it would have been in November. And I see people all the time saying, oh, well, I'm out. I'm going to build my own PC. And it's like, yeah, I guess you could have done that at any point, really. And now, if you waited this long, you're going to be paying a lot more for that PC. So I don't really see that as a strong argument. But we have even more evidence that Valve is looking at shipping this month, because have you seen this rumor about the FCC filings for the Steam Machine and Steam Frame?
Ooh, yeah, I love me a good court document. I love hyper speculation about legal documents I have nothing to do with. Yeah, so let's get into it.
Yeah, right out of the gate, people were saying this was the FCC, as in the United States FCC, which just shows that they were like reading it on Twitter and then putting it in a video or a tweet, like retweeting it or whatever. It's not the American FCC, it's the Canadian FCC. And these documents are like user manuals, component diagrams, like all the hardware stuff that needs to be logged so you can get permission to sell your electronic device in these countries, right? Like they got to go through the government a little bit to make sure that there's not like spyware or like weird stuff being included in this hardware. So that's legitimate. It's real. You can actually go look at the diagrams. But the interesting thing is, when the Steam controller was filed, it was actually filed after the release date of the controller, and all of this stuff was added with a past date of May 20th, whereas all of this Steam Machine and Steam Frame stuff is being added with a future date of June 29th. So everyone's kind of pinpointing this as the date is going to be before or on June 29th that this thing is announced for pre-order, reservation, whatever you want to call it. And I believe it. I'm starting to get on the hype train. I don't want to talk about it, right? Because every time I say something, it seems like it goes the opposite direction. But in my gut, I feel like June is the month. I feel like they're going to hit that first half of 2026 window because they've had months to start stockpiling these things. And I'll give you the other reason after I hear your take on this whole FCC filing situation.
Yeah, I mean, in this situation, you kind of take what you can get. I mean, it's so different from these other traditional console manufacturers, Valve and the Steam Machine, because there are certain kind of checkpoints, I would say, that you can use to track like the release of the next Xbox or the next PlayStation, right? Like not this generation, but in generations past, like the mid-gen refresh, or like it's also pretty publicly known when dev kits for the next-gen console ship. So like there are these like hard tells that you can kind of rely on to more or less predict when the next like the PlayStation 6 is going to come out, or Project Helix, or even like something like the Switch 2, all the rumors surrounding that and the lead up to that. But with the Valve and the Steam Machine, it is so different. So like that's why we latch on to these things, even though like it's like the tiniest bit of information. But I think like, yeah, absolutely, given everything that we're learning, they're still on track for a summer 2026. It would absolutely be awesome if they were able to ship in June and capitalize on all of this hype and this momentum that was just generated this past weekend at Summer Games Fest, Xbox Game Showcase. Like there is a buzz in the air and in the gaming community, both in person and online, I would say. And it would give Valve the perfect head start because Xbox is over here writing a whole dissertation about how they are going to like struggle mightily sourcing the parts for Project Helix. So I'm like 2027, like there's just no way that they're going to be able to ship a new console by then. They're going to be struggling shipping the consoles that they're already making with the Series X and S. So shipping the Steam Machine in summer 2026 would give Valve a massive head start over the release of the PlayStation 6 and the Project Helix. Obviously catering to different audiences, sure, but it gives Valve enough time to separate themselves because let's face it, they're making a play into the living room, which historically has belonged to the big three: Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox. So being able to ship this thing in 2026 gives them a lot of runoff to establish their identity now that they're making that jump into the living room.
Yeah, and you know what the cool thing is about you being an Xbox fan is that like knowing that the Helix is going to be pushed probably, we would guess, to like what, 2028? Do you think that's pretty reasonable?
For sure. Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. Mm-hmm.
you could get the Steam machine in the interim. You could play your Xbox games via Steam. And then, because Xbox is friends with Valve again, when you eventually get your Project Helix, if you want to go back to whatever games you were playing on the Steam machine, at least the Xbox ones and some of the third-party games will have save transferring. So you can grab your Game Pass copy, get your save back, play on the TV with that, get a little bit more power out of the Helix. It really seems like, whereas before, these guys were being positioned as bitter rivals, and I'm sure to some extent there are things that they're still going to be rivals on, it seems like PC is kind of like huddling around that wagon as its own ecosystem with Xbox and Valve, and they're kind of against Sony and Nintendo. So it's still the big three, because it's the two American companies versus the two Japanese companies, and I kind of like that. It's like the platforms are definitely split, but they're being more open within each other's platforms. Like the PlayStation is going to be the PS5 and PS6. That'll be the platform and the handheld. Nintendo will obviously have the Switch 2. And then on the PC side of the fence, it's basically whatever you want to do, right? Like if you want Windows, good, you got Xbox mode. If you want SteamOS, you've got the Steam machine. And if they work with third-party OEMs, you've got that. And you could just kind of pick and choose what you want and still get some great games. So like, I don't feel like there's much to be upset about other than the price, which is where I want your guess. Where do you think this price is coming in?
As much as I want it to be like around the 900 range, like 850, 900, like just the pessimist in me says like we're going to be closer to like the 1000 range. Just like with even though like, yes, we talked about this in the last time I was on, like the word on the street was that Valve was, pretty prepared for this. Like they were being pretty savvy, like in sourcing the parts and the manufacturing of these things. I guess it just all depends on how much. And this is something you've talked about at length on the channel too. Like, how much are they willing to subsidize? How much of a hit are they willing to take? Like, I remember watching one video. You were thinking that they would able to make a profit off of each Steam machine sold. But I mean, with the world economy the way it is, I don't know if that's still true. Like maybe was 6 months ago, but now not so much. So yeah, I guess it all comes down to like how much Valve is willing to take a hit on this.
Yeah, and we know that Xbox, through all these new reveals we've gotten in this 100 days blog post, they're like losing hundreds on every Xbox because they couldn't secure RAM last year. It turned out that was true. Valve is in a little bit of a different spot while similar. They're obviously paying more for RAM, like we know that, but they're sourcing much smaller amounts of it, which could either help or hurt them. Like we don't know unless we get insider information, and Valve is not a leaky company. I like that you're taking the pessimist route because on this channel, I always go as optimistic as possible. The only optimistic way I can look at it is the 512 without a controller. You eat shit on that one. Take a huge loss, sell it for $800, and then jump up to like 1,000, 1,100, 1,200, somewhere around that range for the 512 with controller, 2 terabyte without controller, 2 terabyte with controller, because we know, thanks to the back end of Steam, that there's probably going to be 4 different options when it comes to buying the Steam machine. And if they can just get one out there for like $800 for people who are willing to pay without a controller, play without a controller, not pay without a controller, I think that will go a long way. But one kind of weird benefit, it's not a benefit, but like it's just working out this way, is that everyone is having to jack up their prices. Xbox was saying that over 2027, they expect the RAM prices to go up even more, which means more Xbox price hikes, more PS5 price hikes, and even more Nintendo Switch 2 price hikes. So they're all going to be in lockstep having to screw us over in terms of the pricing. It sucks.
Just so dudes can like make weird videos like with their AI anime waifu.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's certainly like as cheap as possible model for the Steam machine. Definitely consistent with what we've seen from Valve with the Steam Decks. I wonder like if they will have those multiple SKUs ready for launch, or if it'll be more like the Steam Deck where they had like the base model and then over time they like introduced the OLED, they introduced like those different models that eventually came out. Yeah, I think, and that's another aspect of this too. Like, there's a lot of anxiety around this topic since those price increases for the Steam Deck. But I feel like they held out for as long as they could. So you got to give them credit for that.
Yeah, it felt like before we were in this golden age of hardware, right? Like the PS5 is great, the Steam Deck's great, the Switch 2 is great, the Xbox Series X is great. But then on the software side, ever since 2020, things have been pretty rocky and the third parties were really carrying the load. And now we're entering this golden era of software where you've got games that actually look appealing and amazing and they're advertising optimization, but the hardware is where the problems are going to start popping up even more. It's just like we can never just have it good. We can never have a baseline of good.
Dude, and I mean, 6 years ago, 2020, with the launch of Gen 9, it's like we were having sort of similar conversations, but for entirely different reasons, right? Because, because of lockdown and everything was messed up, like supply chains were disrupted. They couldn't stock PlayStation 5s or Series X's at these retailers. And then like game development cycles were all messed up. So there's always got to be something at the dawn of the new gen. I just wish like we could stop living through historical times, but here we are.
Yeah, I remember the days of like the 360 when it was crazy that Xbox, like, they made the 360 in like 90 days. They pumped out as many as they could and they went with a little bit weaker hardware just to get out a year before Sony. And like Sony's shooting themselves in the foot with like the $600 PS3 and then they had to redesign it like 4 times. Like then you get to the PS4 gen and you've got the whole TV disaster with Xbox and Sony passing the game. And then PS5, you've got the lockdowns. No one can buy PS5s or Xboxes. That's been a constant problem throughout this entire generation. It's just weird that like entertainment becomes this insanely like up and down sort of field as time goes on instead of being a steady rise. But speaking of excellent games, I have been playing one, but I want to hear about what you've been playing first before we get into what I've been playing.
So after the Xbox showcase, I got to play a demo of Halo Campaign Evolved, the remake of Combat Evolved in Unreal Engine 5. And I was enjoying it. I was pretty impressed. I will say that I walked away from the Xbox showcase after they showed the new missions trailer with Sergeant Avery Johnson, and I walked away thinking that kind of looked very like what Jimmy says, Unreal Engine 5 slop. I don't know if it was like the color or like the stream quality. I don't know, but I walked away from being like, yeah, that is a game that's definitely made in Unreal Engine 5. So, but in the demo, that look was, I would say, toned down. I thought it looked great. I thought the audio design was awesome, like the original AR audio. I was playing with stereo headsets. That was awesome. The details of the game, like the new details that they were able to add in this remake, are really cool. And in the same spirit of the Combat Evolved that I knew growing up. The only problems that I was running into was that every time, first of all, I was playing on Heroic, and that's usually the campaign difficulty that I play on. And it was really hard. I kept dying at points. I was like, wait, what the hell is going on? I swear I'm not trash. I swear I'm pretty good at all of these games. But I kept dying, and when I died and would respawn at a checkpoint, the performance of the game was just ass all of a sudden. Like it went from running pretty well to running just terribly in terms of the frame rates, like textures missing and the resolution drops. And the only other thing I will say, just this is very nitpicky, and this is saying this with the understanding that I was playing an early build, when I had the energy sword and I would turn, suddenly the resolution, like this energy sword became like a PNG almost. It was like super blurry and like all the motion was gone. But yeah, those are
like breaking down.
Yeah, so those are the only things that I noticed. I was like, whoa, that's a little bit weird. But overall, I would say good experience. I do wonder, like, I don't think it's going to be a game that like sets the world on fire. It's the same game that we have played many times before. A couple of new missions, that's cool. No online multiplayer. There is online campaign co-op, but no multiplayer. So I don't think it's going to like break the internet or anything, but it's going to be a nice way to jump back into this campaign, a nice introduction point for a lot of these young gamers that are coming up that me and Jimmy have been talking to that didn't play like these, like games that don't really seem that old, but I guess are old for like a 23-year-old, right? Like a lot of these younger gamers that we were talking to at Summer Games Fest. And that inspired me to download the Master Chief Collection again on my Xbox. And then I just decided to do like a chronological order playthrough, starting with Reach.
Yeah, Halo's one of my favorite franchises. Like back in the day when we used to do these videos in the studio, I always wore my Halo Reach hoodie as often as I could in the LA weather, just because it's been one of my favorite franchises since I was like a little kid. So I'm always there for a new Halo. And I thought it was sick that in the co-op trailer where they're showing cross-platform play, they show it running on the Steam Deck for like an extended amount of time. And it looked like it was running pretty well. So it seems like all these optimizations we've been hearing about for Unreal Engine 5 are finally coming true. I've been playing Hitman World of Assassination. I have only played the first level, and I've played it for about 10 hours because you can just kill these people in so many different ways, and I'm trying to get all the challenges. But now that I finished the first level, I think I'm just going to start, getting a couple of the assassinations done and then moving through the games, because World of Assassination includes Hitman 1, Hitman 2, and Hitman 3. And I've only played the first game before, so I want to get to that newer content. I've always fallen off of this game before, but after playing 007 First Light, which has a lot of levels that are like tutorial-ish missions for this full Hitman game, I really got into that whole gameplay loop, and I wanted to experience that because it always got such great reviews, and it's like I own it. I may as well try to play it. But yeah, I'm playing it on my SteamOS PC at night on the TV, and then I'm so hooked on it that when I get in bed, as soon as I get in, I like boot up my Steam Deck and get right back to where I was, and it's just like, yes. That's all I got in today's video. We're going to do this regularly here on the channel, so hopefully everyone enjoyed it. We're going to go on Ray's channel next and talk about the Project Helix and everything that was just announced about that. So definitely check out Ray's channel. We've got the collab feature set up, so you can just click on it right from below the video, which I think is awesome. But yeah, well, you have anything to say to the Deck Ready audience?
No, happy to be here. I have admired Steam from afar for a while now. There was a time when before I had a gaming PC or anything that could access Steam at all, I was just a console guy, and these games would come out on Steam and that were only playable on Steam, and I'd just be like the Squidward meme, like looking outside at SpongeBob and Patrick playing. So like getting to build my Steam library, as small as it is compared to Jim's, I've been loving exploring that ecosystem, and yeah, I can't wait to see what they do next.
Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.